Welcome back to another episode of Boom or Bust, the flagship program for this channel. I'm your host Terry, and today we are talking wide receivers. Eventful last few weeks for me, but I'm starting the linebackers right after this, and so linebackers, corner, safeties, and then that will wrap up our first round. Hopefully, before we get to the combine, probably, right on time. That's how it usually goes. But we're on track this year. So we are now going backwards and getting some of these positional discussions out. We already did quarterbacks. Now we're going to do receivers. And we'll be doing the San Francisco 49ers real grade today from a 21 draft. I know I had a bit of a gap. Like I said, it was eventful. I wanted to get that out before the Super Bowl, but either way, it's fine. So I always start with the two Super Bowl teams. So let's start with this receivers class. It is a stacked class. A lot of different prospects with potential. A lot of prospects that are close to each other. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about each one. I'm just going to go down in the order that I have on my evaluations, and then I'll talk about rankings at the end or whatever. But hopefully, we won't spend a ton of time on each one. But before I go into the prospects, want to talk about the position as I typically do. And I've been saying for years, receiver changed. So it's an interesting conversation that could be a very long one. The receivers are a dime a dozen to me, as I said with the running backs. I said that a while ago. I'm sure people have used different terms. I'm not the first one to say that, but as far as where we are with the running backs now, I was one of those people that was on that train a while ago. And so we're in a place where the running back is in a very, very ugly situation. It is what it is. And people confuse that with the run game. The run game is not in a bad place. Particular running back, though, they're in a bad place. And that's why I don't evaluate them. But receivers are similar into the supply and demand. As in, if I can get a productive receiver in the later rounds, then I'll do that. Now, for whatever reason, maybe it's the passing the passing league narrative that's out there, or maybe it's just the highlight plays, but people seem to feel as if you have to get a receiver in the first round. And if you look across the league, that's not true. Are there highly drafted receivers that go on to be, top 20? Yes. In that top 20, you also have late round receivers. You also have mid round receivers. So you don't necessarily have to be a top 10 pick to be great. I mean, then of course you look at the history and we know that's true as well. So it's a difference when you're talking about quarterback, which is for almost exclusively come from the top 10 picks. And that's where the supply is. But receivers not like that. And the reason it's not like that, and the reason I said it became dime a dozen, there was a time where you were just one type of receiver. You were the 5'11", the 6'1" guy. You weren't supposed to be too tall. And then you ran a certain speed, all those different things. That's because the West Coast was so prevalent. That's the receiver. But then you get to the point where you started to accept the taller guys, the Randy Mosses, these bigger receivers. But what really changed is when you had Wes Welker. And a lot of people bring him up in terms of the slot, but really not understanding the impact that he really had. And from there, you get into an era where you can be effective and serviceable in a lot of different ways at receiver. And that's why we're in a place today where, depending on the flavor, you could get a receiver to be very effective. And so I think elite athletic traits are always still going to entice teams, and that's going to push people up into the first round. But you don't necessarily have to be an elite athlete. You don't have to be any one thing to be effective, because receivers can be used in so many different ways. And that's why I say they're more a dime a dozen, because you can get someone in the fifth round and have them light it up if you put them in the right position. So when it comes to evaluating, it makes it a lot easier. It used to be a lot more restrictive back then, especially route running. I'm a big stickler for that still, but you don't have to be a great route runner to be effective. So it opens up and it allows people to be first round, second round caliber players that never probably would have been 15 years ago. So the receiving evaluations have opened up significantly. All right, so let's jump into it. We got Marvin Harrison Jr., and if you follow me, you follow the community, you know he's not my number one guy. He is my number two, but he's not my number one. So the thing with Marvin Harrison, I think the physical traits are really standing out to people, and I'll be interested to see what his workouts look like. But, that's fine. Again, you're going to have people that's what they defer to. But his overall game, to me, needs more polish. He's really good at everything. And I think that's also enticing to people in terms of you get the ball in his hands and he's going to be really good after the catch. You put up the jump ball, he'll be able to go up for contested balls. He's got speed to go deep. You could do screens with him. He can block, like everything. He's got this build, this strength, the height, weight, speed combo. But for me, what stood out immediately was his hips. And when you're talking about receivers and running routes, it all starts with the hips. So for me, I just felt like his hips are a little bit too linear. And I think his feet are quick and everything, but I feel like he's fast in a straight line. I don't know that he's super quick laterally, and I don't think that he's super twitchy. And so that is going to limit a couple things in terms of how you run after the catch and how you run routes. Again, that doesn't mean you won't be effective or can't be effective, but it puts a ceiling on it. And so for people to talk about him as a generational prospect, or at least up there with Calvin Johnson, I was expecting to see a different type of athlete. And while he is explosive, and that's what you think muscular, explosive, I don't know that he's twitchy. And again, that doesn't mean that he's not good. Obviously, he's my number two, but that's just kind of what I see with him. I mean, everything else, we'll see. He's a strider, 6'4", he's long. He's not like instantaneous. I actually didn't think his acceleration was crazy, but once he gets up to top speed, I'm sure he'll be able to get behind many people. And then of course the ball skills and the hands and everything, that's what stands out. And we'll see what coach he gets with and how they're able to mold him. So then we go to Malik Neighbors, pure explosion, one of the most explosive guys I've seen. And you're talking about instant gas. So I was just talking about with Harrison, where I don't see his acceleration as, his initial burst off the line is good, but I don't think he accelerates super fast. Neighbors gets up to top speed real quick. He's moving. And so off that line, he's going to eat up cushion and he's going to make defenders back up. But you get the ball in his hands, dynamic runner, very explosive, wants to run with power and everything. He's not scared of contact. I didn't see him have like that kind of running back mentality like Debo or anything, where he's just real creative or he's got great vision or anything, but speed and power kills. So either way, he's picking up yards for you. Outside of that, I don't know. I think he's a speed receiver, and typically they're going to have separation because people want to give them cushion. And I don't think that his routes were bad at all. Nothing like that. I do think, typical with a lot of college programs, he didn't have a crazy route tree. So they'll be working with him, or potentially whatever system he goes in. He might get into a system where he's running more complicated routes. And I think again, we talk about the hips, we talk about the agility, the change of direction, the hip fluidity. I think he has all of that where he can be a much better route runner than he's been right now, and we'll see. But I think you know exactly what you're kind of getting with Malik Neighbors, and I think he'll be an explosive weapon. Then you got Odunze. He's my number one guy. I mean, he just gives you everything, including blocking. And one thing I noted is that they lined him up at tight end on the goal line packages. So, and this goes for pretty much Washington because I felt that way about Polk too. They really got out there and blocked. And so that might just be a team thing, but I love to see that. That's one of the things I always look for in receivers. Are they out there blocking? Tells me their attitude. But I like that. Getting off the line, I think he's able to uncover off the line. I think down the field, he's able to make the play at the top of the route, make contested catches. I think he's able to get separation in a lot of different ways. I love his hip fluidity. And I keep talking about that. And that was the major difference for me between him, Neighbors, and Harrison. He has the best hips out of the group. So when you watch his routes, they're a lot more crisp than the other guys. And so with a guy who's 6'3" is long, more of a strider, if you get caught in a double move or if you get caught trying to play him deep, he can hit the deceleration really quick, make a sharp cut. So I think whether zone or man, he's going to be great. And then the ball skills is just off the charts. The ball skills we see, the tough catches, the acrobatic catches, the 50-50 ball. Again, I think his yak ability is solid enough. And I don't even necessarily know that you need that. But he just to me had the best overall game in terms of how many ways he could win. So then moving on from there, got Keon Coleman. He's interesting. We'll see if he comes out at 6'4". He didn't look 6'4" to me, but he was one of those guys that was a little hard to grade. Now the ball skills, the hands, you got to give it to him. I think you watch him and you see that he's got some of that highlight reel ability. And I like his burst off the line too, good acceleration. Now his long speed is probably the question that everybody is interested in. How fast is he? Again, is he 6'4"? How does that all line up into where you use him? Now, we're in a day and age where you can put anybody anywhere on the field. But for some teams, that's going to matter. He was in the slot. He was outside. And again, I think that top end speed is going to tell some teams kind of what they think of him. But he returned punts, got some good yak ability. Actually was not bad at giving effort on blocking. So that was a little bit surprising. Now for me, his separation, getting off the jam, running the routes and everything, I think they're above average and there's room to grow there. But you talk about a guy, again, you could probably go deep with. You could definitely run screens with, get the ball in his hands, let him go. And he also could be a pure possession receiver. So I like them all around with his tools. We want to see what type of athlete he is at the high end. But I think he'll be solid. I just don't know that there's anything that jumps off the tape that tells me he needs to be taken ahead of some other people. All right, then we got Brian Thomas out of LSU, partners with Neighbors. For me, he's interesting too. Again, you same system, limited route tree. You want to get an idea of how he's able to run routes. And, what's his ability to separate in the league as opposed to how it was in college. But for me, you like the catch radius, the long arms, the way he can go up and attack the ball, track the ball, 50-50, all that. You like that. I like his speed is good. He's a strider too. So he's not going to be as slow as some people might think. Again, I think he might catch some people off guard. But overall, he's good. He's good with the ball in his hands and everything. Now, some people talk about this being his 1 year of production, that doesn't really matter to me a whole lot, especially with receivers. But I like some of the tools he has, but he's definitely less, I wouldn't say less polished than Neighbors. They're about the same level. The thing is, Neighbors has an elite trait that's going to make him effective more early. Whereas Brian Thomas, I think you're going to have to do a little more polishing. But it depends. Again, you get them in a, let's just say, the Chargers, and they have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen still there. Like, that's going to take a lot of pressure off him where he can eat. So it does depend on the situation. But what you like about him and how he wins is his size length combo matched with his athleticism. All right. The Ohio State guy kind of skipped over. There wasn't a ton of tape to watch him, and it honestly wasn't impressive to me. Adonai Mitchell, I believe is how they say it. I really enjoy him, and again, we'll see. It's a lot of people listed at 6'4". I'm curious if all these people measure out at 6'4", because they did not all look the same on tape, but we will see. But I liked him. I think he was really solid overall. At least from what I watched this year with Texas, a lot more of a possession receiver. I thought he had some great route running, and I do think that he's probably top 3 candidate to be the best route runner in the class once he gets some great coaching. But I think he's really high up there already. You like the hip fluidity, you like the attention to detail. I think his ability to get off the line, his ability to find separation, quick cuts is, I think, is really good. And so I like that much about his polish. With the ball in his hands, I thought he was all right. He didn't do anything, spectacular as a yak runner. And, I think he's fine blocking. He gets in there, he gets dirty, but he doesn't really know what he's doing. So they have to work with him to fix that up. And again, his top end speed is going to tell a lot, because now if all these receivers come in around the same top end speed, that'll be an interesting discussion. But right now, I think that's going to be the separator, because a lot of these guys are similar. So some people might like Keon Coleman, Florida State. Some people might like Adonai Mitchell. And I think that top end speed is going to really tell us. But I think overall, he seems like the better athlete to me. He's just smoother. At least, and his agility, acceleration, and all that stuff. And his route running, to me, separates him from a lot of the other people as well. And I like his hand. I mean, overall, I forgot to mention. So, gradable traits for receivers: speed, acceleration, agility, ball skills, route running, hands. So, for Adonai, I gave him a 4 speed, 4 acceleration, 4 agility, 3.5 ball skills. And that's just one of those times, and it's highlighted for me because that's one of those situations where I just didn't see him in those 50-50 ball situations a ton, to get the consistency of it. But I'm assuming, again, we'll see the workout, that he has the explosion to be able to do that. But he tracks the ball well as a deep threat. 4 route running, 4 hands. So really solid grades. Xavier Worthy, his teammate from Texas. I'm not in love with him like a lot of people are. I mean, that's a yak receiver. That's a guy that gets a lot of screens and just kind of get the ball in his hands and let him go. I think he doesn't have, to me, like the top end speed on film that would warrant me to think of him like I can't even shoot. I'm trying to think. Tyreek Hill wouldn't consider that, but if you want to call him a Tyreek Hill, but that's not even necessarily who I mean. But those slot guys that have extreme agility, extreme speed, and so they're a yak person where you want to get them the ball with screens and all that and bubbles, but they also could take the top off. I don't know that he's that. I didn't see that on film. I thought he was really good at what he does, which is his yak. Everything else, I didn't see that he was great. I didn't see him outrun man coverage. I didn't see him get great separation. So for me, I think those guys, they're going to do well against zone where they can sit down, get the ball, and then make something happen after that. But the rest of it, I don't think there's a lot of ways I see him winning. And he's listed at 164. We'll see what he measures in at, because that's super small. Like, even as a blocker, getting his nose in there just like Mitchell, but he doesn't have any power to move anyone, especially in the NFL. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. That's not a guy I would take a shot on. Next up, we got Troy Franklin out of Oregon. I'll be curious if he's 6'3". I can't say that he looks 6'3", but he's a little thinner too, 178. One full season as a starter, as like big production. But for me, this is a speed receiver, and that's pretty much it. The physical parts you like. I love his agility. Is pretty good. Very fluid hips. The ability to threaten the top of the coverage. The ability to eat up cushion and make a break off of that. So a lot of potential there. People are going to wonder about the power. What is he going to do when people get up and press him? If they press him, how's he going to get off of that? I think a lot of people are going to play off coverage because of his speed, and that's going to help him. But what is he going to do in the physical parts of the game? And for him, I got it highlighted ball skills as well. Tracking the ball well on the deep shots, but what is his ability to go up against contested catches? So that makes him more of limited of where he can win. But I think with his athletic profile, you could coach him up and get him to be an extremely effective player, but I don't know that he'll be an alpha necessarily. And then we go to Xavier Leggett out of South Carolina, a guy that I really like. I think is a big time sleeper. And I can't wait to go watch him again. But 6'3", 227, he looks that size. In the slot a lot, but also worked on the outside, but mainly a big slot. I think with his power and ability, you could easily coach him up to be a great blocker and be an asset in the blocking game. The yak ability was really good. It's pretty surprising. If I'm not mistaken, he might have returned some punts too. I can't remember. But so the yak ability is much better than you might expect. I think really good vision. Definitely some power to go with his speed as well. And then from there, getting physical on the line as far as the press and the jam and the ability to go toe-to-toe with cornerbacks. I think he'll have that. And then his separation, you get the combination of uncovering at the top of the route where you can get physical, go up, make a play. But I also think that he could get separation with his actual route running as well. And so I won't say he's a project or anything. He definitely needs polishing. But if I was to put him up there with Brian Thomas, I probably would lean to Xavier over Brian Thomas just slightly. And we'll see how he tests. Definitely a strider. Definitely build up. Acceleration wasn't instantaneous or anything. Good burst off the line, but not crazy acceleration. So we'll see how he tests. And that'll tell us a lot as well. But you're talking about a guy with a big frame, big catch radius, and pretty much can give you a lot of different things in terms of a weapon. Ladd McConkey, I think one thing for me is he operated, I wouldn't say purely out of the slot, but he operated a lot out of the slot. What's he going to do when people get physical with him? Maybe that doesn't factor in, but that is probably the biggest question mark I have. Outside of that, amazing route runner. I do, like I said, top 3 to be the best route runner in this group. This man knows routes really well right now. He knows how to set them up. Hips are excellent. Feet are excellent. Explosive off his plant. He could plant, explode. Yak ability is great. Punt returner. explosive, faster than you think. And so you get the ball in his hands. Excuse me, get the ball in his hands right away or downfield. I think he could pick up yards after that. And again, just had great separation against some top competition. And I think he's going to test really well. I do think right now he's underrated, but I don't think he'll be. Because a lot of people, and not necessarily NFL, but fans, they really wait to the combine. They really won't make a decision on somebody until they see the combine, which is silly, man. The tape should tell you. But yeah, you look at him, man. I think 6', 185. So his frame isn't crazy, but he catches away from the ball, tracks the ball well. He'll go up and get the ball. Route running is great. Hands are really great. Speed's probably great. I have Ladd McConkey a lot higher than most people. Then we go Tez Walker, North Carolina. I was not a fan of him. I didn't see really anything. Really did not get any separation against man. Like at all. Had issues with the jam at the line, where he really did not uncover well, and that's a red flag, because if you can't do that in college, it's going to be a real problem in the league, and they'll see that. So, good frame. You like the ball skills. Wasn't consistent at all, but showed some ability to go up and attack the ball, and that's probably what you're going to like. But the physical profile didn't seem overly fast. Definitely didn't have a lot of explosion. And route running was average. So I'm looking at a guy that potentially might be a possession receiver against zone coverage, but I wasn't a huge fan of his, to be honest. Jalen Polk out of Washington, big fan of his. And I think he definitely needs some polish, but I like what he brings in terms of his yak ability. He runs very hard once he gets the ball. He reminds me of Brandon Ayuk overall. I said that before. Runs very hard when he gets the ball. I think he was a good blocker to great blocker. You can improve the technique. You always can. But, man, as far as really getting after blocking, I was impressed. Very violent hands on the jam. He's not afraid to get physical with corners off the line, so he's getting there. Now, his route running and ability to create separation with that's the question. The other question, top end speed. For me, I look at him and I think this is a guy that you're going to love in a horizontal game. Much like Ayuk. You're going to love this guy running over routes, crosser routes, slant routes, skinny posts. That's the stuff you're going to love him doing. The more complicated routes, trees might not be his cup of tea right away, but I love the ball skills. I love the agility. I love the hands. He really showed that he can be a 50-50 ball type of guy. He's going to attack the ball. He's going to fight for the ball. Now, his overall athletic profile in terms of acceleration and speed, that's going to be the biggest question. And now, this is a guy that if he ran like a low 4.4, he would skyrocket into the first round. I feel like is a guarantee. But I don't think on film I see that. So you might get something more in the 4.5s, and that probably will push him into the second round. Malachi Corley, not a ton of tape to find, but this is Deebo Samuel. Deebo was like that coming out of college, and which is why I wasn't a fan of his. But like I said, times have changed. Where back then, to me, you can't run routes, you can't get open, you can't catch that well. It's whatever. But now, you get guys like this where they're calling card as yak. You're going to use them like an extended running back. And that's essentially what you got in Malachi Corley. Johnny Wilson will be interesting. 6'7", 235. Obviously an elite frame. But I enjoyed him, man. I thought he was very willing and effective as a blocker. And, of course, you get better technique. He could be great at that. Nobody's really getting around him. He's not going to have a lot of yak ability. I think we'll see. He needs coaching as far as the jam getting off the line. But he really just pushed people. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, I never seen that. He just straight up pushed off defenders and they never called it. And you could probably get away with that a little bit at the top of the route or when the ball's in the air. But in terms of just coming off the line, I mean, maybe you can, because I guess that's all jamming is. But he straight up just pushed people out the way. And so I have no issues with his physicality. Now, the thing that you obviously going to know is that he's probably not going to separate. He definitely ain't burning nobody. But I think he has enough athleticism at 6'7" where he can be great against the zone. I think he could be a great possession guy, move the chains. But I also think that somebody, if he gets one-on-one, you can put the ball up and he's going to be able to take it off top of the head. And definitely a red zone threat. So I think they made it work with Jimmy Graham. I think this guy, he's a former basketball player, I believe. He's a little more athletic as well. And I don't see why. Like, honestly, not the same size, but a lot of people were like, Drake London can be this and that. And he reminded me of him with the same exact game. Like, Drake London in USC, all he did was like throw it up 50-50 or sit down in the middle of zone coverage. I think if he could be effective with that, Johnny Wilson can. I don't see why he wouldn't be. So you ought to have an elite catch radius already. And he might not be the best athlete, and he has some issues with some drops that were easy drops, but he also made some crazy catches. So I think he'll be a late round pick, but I think he'll be interesting, man. I think I would not mind spending a pick if I'm a team on, having kind of that extra piece. Okay. Next up, Jermaine Burton from Alabama. Interesting background, but I think, again, great hips, amazing speed, start, stop. Like, the ability to stop on a dime, start right back up. Not many people got that. Malik Neighbors has that. Burton has that. 6 foot, 200. Started at Georgia. But I think he has a little bit of that Alabama receiver polish, but obviously not 4 years of it. Good route runner, good yak ability. I like him overall, man. I mean, everything to me is rated pretty decently. You definitely got to check on the character. I haven't heard anything crazy, but you got to check on the character. But I like him, man. I mean, he got in there and blocked. Again, knows how to set up routes. Double moves were great. Again, another guy that I think if you get him running horizontal, running crossers, he's going to kill. Didn't get a ton of, he wasn't the go-to guy at Alabama, but I think you get him in the right place, he could be extremely effective. I think he might end up being a gem in this draft. Ricky Pearsall from Florida. I really liked him, man. It's really weird. And a lot of these guys came from Arizona State. But it's really weird where, to me, McConkey is like, what are people talking about? I don't quite get it. But Pearsall is kind of the opposite of that, where it's like, yeah, everybody's like, yeah, he's good, but for some reason we're not sold. And I feel that way too. I mean, I love this yak ability. I mean, I got him at 4 speed, 4 acceleration, 4.5 agility, great feet and hips, 4 ball skills, 4 route running, 4 hands. I mean, he made some crazy catches. I think as a slot receiver, man, he's going to be great too. And, looking at my notes and kind of thinking about it, yeah, man, I think, obviously, again, this is a guy, he runs in the 4.3s. Conversation's going to change. But I think his athletic profile is pretty great as is. But I do think he's more of a slot guy. That's the one thing I will say is that I think he's not limited. But if I'm evaluating him, I'm not really thinking about putting him on the outside too much, depending on what my receiving group is. But I really liked everything that he could do. Roman Wilson, I mean, I wasn't a huge fan. We'll see. I don't think he's 6 foot. Yeah, he was all right. And then Brandon Rice, excuse me, last guy I watched. I think he was just above average position receiver. Great frame. Too many easy drops for me. His hands seem a little bit unnatural. Um, I like I like everything that he could do technique wise for the most part. I just don't know that he's definitely not the level of athlete his dad was, but his hips seem a little bit too stiff. So as far as his ability to be shifty and run routes is limited. I like his yak ability. He runs really hard. I like that explosion. But yeah, man, I think he's just kind of an above average possession receiver. Again, a guy that I'm not sure how well he's going to do against man coverage in the league, but against zone, he should be able to do some things. But I think he could be effective too. But I got him more middle of the road. All right, so those are the receivers that I watched, and I think I covered most of that stuff. So now let's jump over real quick to the real grade for the San Fran 49ers. We'll skip the first pick because that's probably the most discussion. But you got Aaron Banks, second round, out of Notre Dame guard, still with the team. Then started his rookie year, but started 2 years after that. Trey Sermon, no longer with the team. I really thought that was going to work out. No longer with the team, didn't really play much. You got Ambry Thomas still with the team, was playing this year. I know it was injuries in the secondary, but he was in that rotation. Jalen Moore still with the team, back up. You got Lenore, who's a starter from the 5th round. And you got Hufanga, who is probably an all-pro from the 5th round. Obviously, he was hurt this year. And you got Elijah Mitchell, who is still there as a backup to McCaffrey, but has some really good years. So you look at that, and I think you got a pretty solid draft. So out of that group, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 6 out of 7 still on the team. Then you got 1, 2, 3 starters out of that 6. So half of the people still on the team are starters. One's in a rotation. I think that's pretty good. But you got to get to the Trey Lance of it all. So you swing for the fences. And when you swing for the fences, a lot of the grade comes down to that. Now, typically when you swing for the fences, you don't have a ton of picks. And they had a lot of mid-round picks, and they made the most of it, which gives you big points. But Trey Lance, I didn't look up the trade, but we know they gave up a lot of picks to move up to get to number 3, get Trey Lance. Trey Lance never truly becomes the starter, and he's no longer on the team. You trade him, and I forgot what they traded him for, but obviously it wasn't the value they went to go get him. So that is a huge miss. Now, it's a weird thing. This is a very rare case because I give them credit for making the move to get rid of Trey Lance. I give them credit for acknowledging that and having the guts to move on when you felt, okay, we want to push Jimmy G out, but he's still better. Then you get Purdy, Mr. Relevant, and you like, Mr. Relevant's better. The owner said it. He said it's a tough pill to swallow. Why? I don't know. Probably because you gave up all those assets. But either way, I'd be happy I found a quarterback. But anyway, so Trey Lance, and I'm not here to tell you he's a bust. Obviously, I tell you 3 seasons. And 3 seasons, usually in terms of playing, and he hasn't really played. So I'm not going down that lane. But in terms of just the draft game for the 49ers, that's a huge miss. So that makes this draft a little tough. You get an all-pro in the 5th round. That's amazing. You get a starting corner in the 5th round. Great stuff. And you got Aaron Banks. He worked out. Trey Sermon is no longer on the team. For me, I'm going to give this draft a B- because I cannot discount the pieces. Maybe a C+. I can't discount the pieces you got. Hufanga makes this draft something different because he is like all pro, means he's one of the best safeties in the league. Now, safety isn't a huge glamour position where it's like, oh, you got to get him in the first round. So a lot of safeties come from middle round. So yeah, but he's still an all pro. Lenore, fifth round, that's a good get. Ambry Thomas, that's a good get. Trey Lance Smith is a tough pill to swallow for what you gave up. So I'm gonna stick with my gut. I'm gonna say B minus. I'm gonna B minus. All right, that's it for me. Go down to the comment section. Let me know what you think about the receivers. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.